Okay. Great. We're live, and big welcome to Unlocking Global Talent. Today, my name's Ian Squires. I'm with Jonathan Beach, the Managing Director of Migrate UK. And what we really want to share with you today is how to employ overseas talent workers in the UK. Just first off, what I'd love to do is introduce Jonathan. Jonathan, could you just give us a bit of background of your experience in immigration, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ian. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. It's my 30th year in the immigration arena. Started back in 1994 working for the Immigration and Nationality Department, IND. It's been named under lots of different acronyms since then. But then moved on to private practice, worked in London for EY and KPMG. For 7 years, and in 2004 set up Migrate UK. So over that time, dealt with a lot of legacy immigration cases, both from a personal and a business perspective. We're looking at pretty much all sponsorship work permits as they were back in the day, family visas, students, and then the very start of the points-based system. So the old highly skilled migrant program. And
Right.
two in general, which were the only real true points-based systems we had. But as the time has gone on, we've focused very, very much on the business side and family members of those who are coming to the UK for all manner of work purposes, whether that be sponsorship or through the other routes. But also we're finding we're dealing a lot with compliance and making sure that businesses are pretty much zipped up when it comes to keeping themselves clean, keeping the UK VI away from the door, and just being that extra hands-on person in the background, providing all the legal advice at any one time.
Great. And just for everyone's benefit, I mean, really what we want to try to show you today is how to unlock this overseas global talent route for your business. We'll show you our sort of proven model that we've used to bring thousands of people in and help hundreds of businesses. And the key is how we make it pain-free for you. And we'll also explain to you, as Jonathan just alluded to, how we help you manage the Home Office compliance element of this as well. So, and just finally, a little bit of housekeeping. What we will do is take questions at the end. So, feel free to fire any questions into the comments box, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can within our time today. But rest assured, any questions that you do come up with, we will respond to you. So look forward to some questions and putting Mr. Beach on the spot and seeing if he can handle them all. I'm sure he can after all those years of experience. So okay. First off, basically what we really want to do is just really discuss, what options there are for companies. We know about the skilled worker route, but it's interesting, Jonathan. There's lots of ways people can get into the UK. Could you just sort of run through those and explain those for us?
Yeah, sure. This is very important because a lot of employers don't know about this. And although the main purpose of the chat is to go through sponsorship and how it works, there are many non-sponsored work routes, and the majority of these routes that are listed on this slide, they can work in the UK with very few restrictions. The most, I suppose, the only real restriction is you can't work in the majority of these as a sports person or a sports coach, and in some cases a doctor or dentist in training, depending on when you came here. But the majority will have the right to set up a business and to be employed. And there won't be any minimum thresholds for salary apart from the national minimum wage. So it makes life quite easy for employers. So if we start at the top, a very obvious one, we've got European nationals and EEA who joined the EU settlement scheme before it closed. And even those who have applied to the EU settlement scheme since and are waiting for a decision are able to work here. As with any of these particular categories, it's very, very important for an employer to conduct a right to work check. Dependence of sponsored workers is a huge one. There are, in the last full 12-month period until the end of 2022, there are 147,000 dependents of work visa holders in the UK, and they will be able to stay here for the same length of time as the worker, and they can work without separate sponsorship. You've also got dependents of longer term students, so those who are studying undergraduate degrees and longer in the UK, generally longer than 9 months. They can work in a very, very similar way to dependents of work visa holders. You probably heard in the press, and it's very important to note that from next year, there will be a restriction on dependents of students, whereby any new visa coming in from later next year, they will be restricted. They won't be able to work, but any who are currently in the UK at the time will be unaffected. But last year, there were 85,000 who came in as dependents of students. The graduate visa is something that most people are getting to grips now with. It's very, very popular. So once a student has finished their course in the UK, and they can stay for between 2 and 3 years, depending on their qualification, they can work. It's a very good entry into the work market. It opened in July 2021. There are currently 73,000. And of course, once we finish this academic year, there's going to be a lot more. And we're finding that this is a very popular category. It doesn't lead to settlement. So a lot of employers who are taking on graduates are falling into needing to go through sponsorship to keep them on for longer term. But it's very much a good category to test out a candidate before they get sponsored. Of course, you have those who've got settlement, so indefinite leave to remain. Spouses and partners of those who are settled in the UK, about 50,000 came in last year. They can work freely as well. Ancestry visas, if you're over 17, Commonwealth national, and you have a British-born grandparent, you can work in the UK 5 years and then settlement there as well. And then the temporary workers, which has taken over from the old Tier 5 system. Most commonly, you have youth mobility schemes. So this used to be called Working Holiday Maker. Very, very popular again. This will be for 2 years temporary work. It's being extended for longer for New Zealand citizens, and probably from next year for Australian citizens as well. So they can stay for longer, for 3 years, and it's extending the age range from 18 to 30 to 18 to 35. So it shows the UK is very, very much geared to getting the younger skilled generation to work in the UK. Other categories which have been introduced more recently, you've got the Hong Kong visa, and one that we haven't mentioned on here actually is the Ukraine scheme, the family scheme, the sponsorship scheme, and the extension scheme for those who are being displaced, again, have the ability to work in the UK, as do global talent. A smaller field, the criteria it has got more difficult to qualify under global talent. Probably about 3,000 cases a year go through this, so a small number. But if we then compare that to a massive number, not currently in the UK, but the high potential individuals, HPIs. Now, this group of people, again, a very recent addition to the immigration rules, this group of people, you're looking at graduates from the top 50 universities worldwide outside of the UK who have graduated in the last 5 years. Now, when we did our maths, we worked out that there were 5.2 million admissions to these universities over the last 5 years. If they all decided to descend on the UK, it would be one hell of a population problem. But it hasn't been taken up to its full capacity. I don't think it's being promoted that much, but this could be a very, very good scheme for employers to try out employees before they go ahead with sponsorship. Again, doesn't lead to settlement, will need to have another immigration category, but a very, very good starting point.
So that's great, John. So what we're really saying is that ask some questions, at the beginning of the process with someone you're interested in, and you just never know. It might save you some money. It will save time, and obviously we're here to help. We want to find the most effective route to get your potential employee into the UK. So that's great. Thanks very much for that, Jonathan. And really, if you look at it from in terms of the employers that are on the webinar today, our team basically work with UK businesses that are finding it very difficult to recruit for key roles. And at the moment, there's still over 1 million job vacancies in the UK. And what we've found is the impact it's having on businesses is sometimes they just have a lack of capacity. So they just can't actually turn the work out that they've got at the moment, which can cause stress and extra cost. There's a loss of revenue where there's opportunities people could go for. So, for example, technology projects that people could take on, but they haven't got the teams able to deliver it for them. And I've seen this firsthand in terms of overworked teams and the health service. That's a huge area for bringing in overseas talent. I've had experience of that over the last couple of years, and I've seen teams of maybe 6 where there should be 8, and the teams work so hard, but they genuinely get absolutely knackered. There's no other word for it. And so that can cause stress and high recruitment costs. I mean, you put yourself in the shoes of a recruitment company, it's hard for them to find the talent they need to fill these roles. It takes them longer to fill each position. So basically, yeah, we can potentially offer as candidates to the recruitment industry as much as directly to business. So overall, what we're really trying to say is consider this as one of your strategies, and basically that way you can widen the number of people that you're looking for to, when you're looking to find opportunities. So next, going on to that is really, Jonathan, I mean, how do you do it? How do the Migrate team make it work? So overall, and then we can look at the process. Yeah.
And it very much is a process. That's in a nutshell how we do it. I mean, we're a team of 8, but over the years we have dealt with over 6,500 work-based applications, and it really is because there are so many rule changes that come in throughout the year, and always when there's a change in government. So next year we're going to see this all happen again. You have to just make sure that you understand what the change is going to be. You look at the smoke on the horizon, and you put a strategy together for each business to make sure that their hiring and their forecasting is spot on. It's very, very difficult sometimes. You kind of have to make assumptions. But with the number of applications that have been coming through and the sheer volume over the last 12 months, and I think all immigration advisors are finding the same, is that you have to then get a process together to make sure that you don't miss anything out. It's not a case anymore of just giving someone a piece of paper, coming in with a work permit, showing an immigration officer, and that's it, they're done, nothing else to do. There is more to do than that, but with the right process in place, it doesn't have to be difficult.
Okay, that's great. And so if you could just briefly just take us through that process, Jonathan. Yeah.
Yeah, so seven steps here. Very, very simply, the first stage is just to get in touch. Any situation you have, if you need to use as a sounding board, and you have got an employee who's needing to come in, you're thinking about hiring someone from overseas or who's currently here, you just need to book an appointment with us. You can do that via our website, contact us directly. And once we do have that appointment, it's free of charge, and we can provide guidance on the next 2 or 3 steps at least. So what we do is we just understand a little bit more about your business, who you are, whether you've had a license before, your size, because that will dictate the cost of the actual home office fees for hiring someone, your key users as well. And then we look at the candidates. If you already have someone that you wish to hire, and most do who get in contact when they do have a query on sponsorship, we ask questions about who they have. Are they with them? Are they overseas? What kind of job they're doing? What is their salary banding they're wishing to offer? Do they have any specific qualification needs in the UK? And do they have any family? All these things are covered. And then, of course, we can evaluate your overall potential for a license and put together a proposal for that, which will put down all of the costs for a 5-year period. So we try and make it as transparent as we possibly can. Once accepted, we can put the application together. So this will be all of the justifications, the online application, recommending and checking the documents that are required for the process, and assist with the submission and putting that through the quickest means possible. And it's more than likely that you can get a license through within 10 working days. This is one of the myths we'll get onto, but it can be a relatively quick process depending on whether you've had any compliance issues before. It doesn't stop there. We can then help with getting or requesting certificates of sponsorship, issuing a certificate of sponsorship for each employee, and providing them with full guidance on the procedure from both within and outside the UK. And this also extends to family members as well, which are often forgotten, but they do have their needs. We make sure that we look at the arrangements for coming over to the UK, if they're married or not married, if they're cohabiting, if they have children, we look at all of that as well. And then the big one, which has become very, very important, is compliance. So we don't just walk away. What we do is make sure that all of the reporting, the record keeping, and the right to work checks are carried out correctly for the first employee and from then every employee thereafter.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for that, Jonathan. Just a question, how many people are coming into the UK via the skilled worker route now, and how many companies are taking advantage of it?
It's gone up more than twofold since 2021. We're finding that in the year ending 2022, and this would have accelerated since, over 165,000 sponsored workers have come into the UK, of which 140,000 of those are skilled workers. Skilled workers is the most popular route because it leads to settlement in the UK. It's taken over from the intra-company transfer route, or the global business mobility route, as it's called now, because skilled worker offers more flexibility for the worker. Now, if you break that down even further, more than 50% of those who are sponsored are within the health sector.
Right.
And the next biggest sector would be the IT and scientific sector, where over 40,000 certificates were issued in 2022. If you look at the numbers of sponsors, this has shot up considerably. So it's pretty much in the doldrums until 2020, where there were pretty much around about 38 to 40,000 sponsors. And this remained static from around about 2012 onwards, because the rules had stayed the same in terms of who could come into the UK and how much they need to be paid. The rules changed considerably for sponsorship in December 2020 and opened up the market. And what we found is that from December 2020 until the present day, another 21,000 sponsors have been added. So there are now over 61,000 organisations that have got the ability to sponsor, and the majority of the newer sponsors are SMEs.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. So we'll come on to that when we start to now explore the myths of immigration, because I think, I've learned a lot over the last couple of years, but I think perception and reality are quite different here. And what we want to try and do is make this as clear as possible for you. So sort of the first exploring the myths is, first question we commonly come across is, my company isn't big enough to qualify for a license. What's your response to that, Jonathan, please?
Well, very simply, there is no company size criteria. It's all to do with the requirement to have a genuine vacancy. In fact, there isn't a requirement to have a UK business set up at all. And this will come as a big shock to a lot of people, but it's now possible for people to come from businesses overseas to set up a company, a subsidiary in the UK, set it up, be sponsored or sponsor themselves as part of the new company setup, and then go through and sponsor more workers from there on in. So there needs to be a foothold in the UK at the very, very least. So having a registration with Company House, but you don't even have to be trading in the UK.
Right.
The majority of companies, however, who will be applying for this are, at the moment, we're talking probably micro businesses, to be honest with you. We've got businesses that are certainly less than 10 employees.
Right.
Majority definitely under 50. And there really isn't any issue. In fact, it's often easier for a smaller organization to apply for a license because the documentary evidence isn't so heavy. Although there are documents that need to be sent in, you don't need to rely on accounts if you're less than 18 months old. You just need to have a UK bank account, for example. You need to be registered with HMRC, have an accounts office reference number or PAYE reference number. You could have employees' liability insurance, and you might have a lease with with one of these service offices. But it doesn't really have to be particularly difficult. You don't need to be based in one of the major cities and have a proven track record and a huge balance sheet or turnover for any of this. It just has to be a genuine vacancy you need that you really are struggling to fill from within the UK.
Okay, that's great, Jonathan. Okay, the next sort of myth I'd like to come on to is, oh my goodness, this will be too expensive for my business. So I think we've got a little bit of breakdown we can show you in a moment. How much will this cost me?
Yeah, the cost of sponsoring or getting a sponsor license or sponsoring someone from overseas or within the UK, it very much depends on a number of factors: the size of the organisation, and also that you will need to pay the sponsored worker a rate that's relevant based on the job they're going to be conducting in the UK, their age, whether they're in a shortage skill. But if we go to the actual kind of home office fees themselves, we've got here an example of what it would be for a small organisation. So this could be typically an organisation that has got less than 50 staff, or less than a 10.2 million turnover, less than a 5.1 million pound balance sheet. If it meets two of those criteria in the last set of accounts, then you'd be classed as a small organisation, and the fees are lower. But even if you're a large organisation, it isn't a huge deal when you split it down into a yearly figure. So the license is a one-off cost. It will last for 4 years, and you can just extend that for a further 4 years after. For a small business at the moment, it's £536 for a 4-year license. All of the fees here will actually include our professional fees as well. And once you've got your license, it's a case of paying as you go for each employee you wish to sponsor. Now, for the first recruit, if you're looking again as a small organisation, you're wanting to bring someone in for 5 years, the first recruit, it works out with again, our professional fees included, around about £1,300 a year, which you look at it, when a lot of these businesses have had a vacancy for at least 9 months, it isn't a huge deal. The costs here are the costs that the employer needs to cover. So you've got a skills charge, you've got a certificate of sponsorship as well. Within the first recruit, the professional fees included here will include a compliance service. So we will provide the compliance, we'll check, make sure that all the record keeping, the reporting is carried out, make sure the company has got the same personnel or if they need to change it, their address. All of those things will be carrying out on a monthly basis, and that's included within the first recruit fee. Thereafter, each recruit after that, you're looking at about £900 per year in terms of professional and home office fees.
Okay.
From the recruit side of things, they will have an NHS surcharge, and there will be a visa fee, which they'll need to also cover for dependents. So that's very important that when we look at our process, we do cover the family members involved with this as well, because part of the negotiations of getting in an overseas worker is who will pay for those fees. But overall, you can see that it really doesn't have to be an extremely expensive exercise.
No, that's really good. So no restriction on company size, and cost effective compared to the current costs of recruiting for difficult roles in the UK. So that's good news. So I mean, I think the other question then really comes down to there must be lots of red tape involved here. How do you manage? Is it true, and how do you manage the administration at Migrate, apart from the process we're seeing?
Yeah, there is a bit. That's what that's what we do. I touched on the point that the rules do change quite regularly, but it is sometimes like being at school again. But this is where the process comes into it. So we always look at the process we follow. We do follow that with the same, with each organisation based on their needs. We also make sure that they have a touch point within the organisation, so they have a consultant who will be dealing with them all the way through. But having a larger team, we can also make sure there's backup there as well. And we also build up that rapport. We make sure that you feel comfortable asking any questions as you go along. whether that's related to the sponsor, the employee, or any other UK immigration matter. We're just more than happy to be there on the end of the phone or on a video call. We do look after the actual talent, the candidate themselves, as well as their family members. And we do this throughout. We're looking at making sure we look at the long term here. So what are the requirements for the business long term? We look at their forecasting, what they need to fill their vacancies for as far ahead as they can see, but also from the individual, making sure they understand what their rights are, how they can stay here, what they need to prepare for that 5 years leading up to the time that they can qualify for settlement, making sure they've got, they're taking a record of their absences, for example, reporting changes of address to the Home Office, making sure that they're doing everything they need to do to just stay on the right side of the UK VI regulations. And then with the ongoing compliance, we're always in the background offering and just checking and reporting and record keeping. So if your employee turns up late for the first day of work, if they have a visa application that takes too long, if they change, again, if they change their address, they change their work address, they change their job, we can help with managing all of that process. And furthermore, and really what is becoming more popular is HR department training. So providing workshops based on the level of experience within the HR team. We can do this on site, we can do it via video call, we can do it for any number as well, and just make sure they're aware of the regulations and how they can sponsor employees themselves to go through the procedure so they can take care of this and then pass those skills down to future team members.
Okay, that's great. I think the other question is that comes through is, oh my, I need to be a rocket scientist or have a PhD to qualify. I definitely wouldn't get in if that was true. What actually is reality? What sort of roles can people come into the UK for?
Well, I think if I think back to, I don't know all of the cases, but in the last 6,500 sponsored cases we dealt with, I think you probably only had maybe 2 rocket scientists come in.
Right, okay.
And PhD, and again, it's nothing to do with the qualification. The qualification can help when it comes to the pay rate for that employee. If you've got a PhD, then of course an employer can negotiate to pay them lower than the standard threshold or going rate for the job. But it's a bit of it is certainly a myth. You don't need to have a qualification, a formal qualification to qualify for sponsorship in the UK. It's all to do about the job, the level of the job that you're doing here. And there are now over 1,100 jobs that can be conducted under sponsorship. And it's you're looking at now what it has been before. And the reason why it's become popular is that before December 2020, you needed to have a job that was set at degree level. Doesn't mean you have to have a degree, but it was degree level, RQF level 6, they called it. It's now gone down to RQF level 3, which is a level standard job. If you are providing service at that level of job, you can actually qualify for sponsorship. And there's a whole list, and we're going to be coming onto a list for a couple of sectors shortly. But this is one of the big myths as well. If you've got any doubts or questions about the role that you wish to sponsor or take on in any immigration category at all, then just get in touch.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for that, Jonathan. So what I really want to do now is just look at the roles really, and I just got a couple of slides that I'd just like to share with you. Now, this slide is deliberately busy. This actually is the roles that any UK company can recruit for. So it covers all of the main functions from the CEO down to all of the key sales roles that you would expect to find in the business. A vast majority of the business support roles. I will send you the slides, by the way, or if you request them, so that you can actually look at this in some detail. But HR, you've got some key HR roles all there that you can recruit for through this route. Marketing, another key business function. Finance, basically anything through from finance through to analysts, and customer service. So there's a vast amount of roles that you can just any company qualifies. As long as you've got a sponsor license, you can fill all those roles which aren't industry specific. And then just give you an example, going through an example, just in terms of the technology sector, and this is just part of it. I've just broken it down into some sectors. So I'll just take an example of specialist managers. So in there, you've got customer service engineer, installation engineer, network officer, telecoms communication and engineer, telephone engineer, although it's nearly all gone mobile now. And then program managers, business analysts, and systems designers. Each of these sections have a big subsector of jobs jobs below them that you'll see on the deck. If we take it, send it out, and going all the way to the bottom, business and related professionals and telecoms engineers. So a vast array. And just to help a little bit, because what we're seeing is technology and media merging, particularly with the digital transformation going on in lots of businesses at the moment. If you look at this other sector, advertising and PR, print media, TV, film and radio. Classic example. If you look at TV, film and radio, you can recruit anyone from a radio journalist through to a reporter, actor, any DJs that are listening. You can come on through as well. Cameramen, projectionists, sound engineers, satellite engineers. There's a whole array of jobs that are there, and I think roughly there's about 240 job code types, and I think, and Jonathan will correct me, around about 1,400 individual roles that that can be applied for. So it's significant, and I think the important thing is to understand all the key roles any company can apply for, and then talk to us so we can drill down to show you the roles that are specific to your industry. And a lot of this information is hard to get, but obviously it's what we do. Every day, basically. So just like to move on from there for a moment. I've just actually got a couple of questions for Jonathan before we take them. Any other questions that come through? Basically, Jonathan, what made your clients first pursue overseas recruitment initially? I mean, you've got lots of clients and people, you're the first point of contact quite often. What made them contact you initially?
Well, I'd say that the main factor a couple of years ago would have been the trouble with recruitment or recruiting, the skills they needed, especially in high-tech businesses. A lot of the clients contacting us had a vacancy for, in some circumstances, more than 9 months they couldn't fill, and the productivity was very poor. It was burn out the existing employees. And they really did start to have to look abroad to bring these skills in. More recently, there's been a shift. And what you're finding is that employers are looking at sponsoring existing employees who come in on all of the other immigration routes that we mentioned earlier on in the presentation. And this is something that was touched on really well by one of the guest speakers we had in the last webinar a couple of months ago, an IT company who took on, who I remember had a couple of dependents of sponsored workers who needed to change immigration category. They just found them really impressive workers. They moved into sponsorship. I think they had problems with sponsorship before, but once they got sponsorship to work for them, they took on quite a number of other employees because they knew how it works, and the myths were shattered pretty much for them. So you'll find that the majority of the inquiries are getting, they've identified a candidate already, and very, very common as well, they are already in the UK as a graduate visa holder, a student, or they are holding sponsorship with another employer. Because another myth that we could touch on is that you need to make sure that if you are being sponsored, the sponsorship is for a particular employer. You can't just take on a sponsored employee because they've got a certificate of sponsorship. They have to go through the process again. But it is certainly becoming more popular, those people that they've currently got working with them.
Okay, that's good. And just can you give us a couple of examples of clients where it's particularly worked well for them and maybe helped them to face up to some challenges?
Yeah, a couple.
Thinking of the automotive industry in
Oh,
particular.
right. Yes. Yes. Yeah. There's a couple of examples. If we start with the automotive industry and Formula One engineering racing, um, it really does work well in this industry, because you are taking on, again, it's competitive. You're taking on employees who are working from competitors overseas. They've got industry knowledge that isn't, and training and experience that isn't really common or known in the UK. And also with that, it builds up academies. So lots of the employers, and if we're looking at the automotive sector, are looking at bringing in temporary workers on 12-month contracts, very low rate wage requirements for that, and then trying them out before they move them on to sponsorship. So setting up academies, temporary workers, competitors, taking them from competitors overseas and working in, setting up new entities, and it's working very well for that industry. If we look at a completely different industry, so horse racing, for example, it's actually a need to bring in overseas workers. And again, this is something that they couldn't rely on a couple of years ago, and now we've been helping, I think, probably with over 150 work riders and trainer riders and stable hands coming into the UK for stables in the UK, trainers, because there are so few coming out of equine colleges in the UK.
Yeah.
There's very little homegrown talent, and it's very difficult. And that, for them, it's a matter of survival. They have to be looking overseas to bring the talent in, and predominantly we're looking at India and South Africa for this talent. But the more you look, the more you can find that there are other, I mean, South America, you've got Mauritius, Australia. A lot of this industry are sourcing employees from all over the globe, and finding that they are staying for the long term, and they're providing a very good level of service as well.
Yeah, oh, that's great. And just sort of finally from me is any advice you can give? So if someone's thinking of doing this, any advice you can give to before they start recruiting overseas talent? What would you say to them, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is don't turn away a CV just because you think it appears to be from someone from overseas. You could well be very pleasantly surprised. And don't be put off by all the complexities. Again, you can probably see from what we've been speaking about, if you do partner with a reputable immigration firm that's regulated, they can find out the most efficient way for this person or people to work for you, whether it's going to be sponsorship or otherwise. There are lots of ways of doing this, and just make sure that you again, everything's in process. You're aware of what your obligations are. Compliance is key to this. We've mentioned it before, but if you do that, then it could be. And again, you're looking at the diversity, which is a big key positive factor within UK business at the moment as well. So do not be put off by this, and feel free to contact us if you've got any queries at all.
Okay, that's really good. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Jonathan. And really, I think we've picked up quite a few of the questions that we've had so far with what I've asked Jonathan. I've got a couple of more questions, so please, anyone else, please fire them through. Just really want to just sort of summarize a couple of things before we go on to the last few questions. Is really, can it work for you? Can it work for a UK business? I mean, already 61,000 UK organizations are using this route, and I would say that I would say that those companies using this have got a competitive advantage. So why it's something I think is worth seriously looking at, particularly if you're facing real recruitment challenges. Because I mean, our experience, and obviously we talk to lots of clients, is what they like is they get experienced people coming in, which means they become productive quite quickly, and less training costs. Now, don't get me wrong, nearly all of our companies that we work with do their best to use UK talent and train. But basically what they find when they bring people in from overseas, there is less training required. They're skilled, qualified people coming in. And our companies on the whole, I would say, have either got the talent and it's enabled them to survive and move forward, or it's really been used to fuel growth. And I think, again, you can't say this for every single person, but if you looked at it in general, what you do find is you get some very loyal employees through this. Basically, you're giving people sort of a life-changing chance, basically, and just bear in mind with them immigration that a lot of the people that come over actually send a lot of money back overseas as well. So it actually helps the countries these people come from as well, which I think there's billions that flow through that route. So I think there's lots of big benefits, and yeah, we do a lot of work, particularly in technology, construction, leisure, health, increasingly healthcare. So there's lots of different sectors, and everything we showed you applies to every sector here. And just a final couple of things. We do offer a free consultation, and all attendees. Obviously, we've got everybody who's attended the list on the list, which is great. High number of people have registered, but they'll receive a free compliance service if they take us on, and we get you your employer sponsor license. We have a great track record in that. Then the compliance service in the first year, which is worth about £800, is free if you're on board by the end of September, because I appreciate these things take thinking through. And then existing licensees, if you're using someone else and not happy with the service, then yeah, we would offer a rebate of 10% on our fees for the first year if you're on board by the end of September. So yeah, Jonathan has been very generous today. I've twisted his arm, and we've got some, hopefully some attractive offers to you. But just bear in mind, the first step is some free advice, to make sure that works for you. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to start to sort of fire some questions for you. Blimey, the first one here is from Jojo Promise from Ghana. Yeah, you might have an answer for this one, Jonathan. You might not have had a few months ago. Please, how can I get an internship program with any energy company in the UK? So there you go. It's put you on the spot.
Cool, it is, isn't it? It's turning to the recruiter here. I mean, there are certainly opportunities for this, and it is possible. I'm sure there are. I mean, we do have clients within the energy sector, and I'm sure there are internship programs available. It's something that I can probably provide more of an answer for from the autumn, to be honest with you. It's a case of watch this space, but I would say do keep in touch with us on this, and any further information about yourself, please do send through to us as well, so we can just assess your skills and see what you're suited to.
Yeah, we're certainly looking to revolutionise the industry. Say no more. I'll certainly promise something there, Jonathan. But yeah, no, it's really exciting, and something we've worked on for a long while. So we appreciate the challenge you have, promise of finding that. And we've got Joe Sunner. Joe, nice to hear from you. He's over here and in the UK. Can he book an appointment with you, Jonathan? Week commencing the 3rd of July. The reason I raise this one is I know you're going on holiday soon, so we need to act quickly on that.
Week commencing a 3rd would be good, actually, Joe. Yeah, do get in touch. It'd be good to see you.
Yeah. Okay. And Larissa, what is the timescale for obtaining a visa for an overseas candidate? Thanks for that question, Larissa.
Oh, it depends. This depends very much on the on what visa they qualify for. If we're looking at the subject of this presentation, and the person needs to be sponsored, all in, you shouldn't be looking at any more than 3 months. But of course, you need to have a UK employer. You then need to get the license, which could be done from start to finish in less than 5 weeks, really, depending on how quickly you can get the information together. Issuing a certificate of sponsorship could be done within 48 to 72 hours. And then it's the preparing for getting the visa application done, which can take about 15 to 20 working days. So it should be, if we add a little bit of time on there for delays from overseas and for getting a license, maybe you should be looking at about 2.5 to 3 months. But if they qualify for something else, it could just be a visa application, which on average would take about maybe 10 to 20 working days. But again, if you have something in mind there, a particular category, it's worth getting in touch.
Okay, and Larissa's on fire. So the next question for Larissa, I'll just go through this because it might link in with some other people. Can EU family members of settled employees in the UK come and work in the UK without any restrictions? Now, this would be a skilled worker visa, Larissa has said, because they already hold a license. So, and I've heard of a family visa, but that I think would be most appropriate. So what's the situation here, Jonathan?
Again, it's a very good question. There's a couple of parameters we need to look at. If we're looking at someone who's settled in the UK, it could well be a family life visa from overseas that can be applied for. If they are settled under the EU settlement scheme, they can come under a different family visa as well. If they are here as an employee who isn't settled and they've got a skilled worker, then absolutely, yes, they can come over as a dependent. They would need to, if we're talking about a partner, they would need to be either married or in a cohabiting relationship for at least the last 2 years and show proof of that, and a visa from overseas, or it's possible they could switch in the UK unless they're here under a short-term visa, such as a visitor. They couldn't do it then, but it's something definitely that can be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, and Dragana has pointed out, I've missed her question. Actually, I saw 3 come from Larissa quickly. So, Dragana, we're going to do yours now. So, Dragana, she's the owner of a UK company. Can my company sponsor a visa for me? So, good question again. I've not had that one before.
Yeah, well, they can. It just depends on the mechanics of how this works. Is there a company, if a company set up in the UK, and you have someone here who's already an authorizing officer or settled, another director of the company, for example, then you can be sponsored. There are no restrictions now on the amount of shareholding that a company owner has, so you can come over and be sponsored that way. Or if you have an established organization overseas, you can come over and set up a business as long as it's not been trading, and you could come over under an expansion worker visa, which is part of the global mobility route. It doesn't lead to settlement, but it means you can set up and switch once you're here to skilled worker. So again, I'm kind of having to ask lots of questions before we can come to a conclusion. But it's a very good question. It is possible, certainly, but I think we need to look into that in a bit more detail.
Okay, so I think end of the day, we're more than happy to talk to you. Just make an appointment, link with Jonathan, and happy to offer you some free advice there. So sorry to think you're out of sequence and cause any stress there. So I'm doing my best to keep on top of it. This was Jane. Thanks for your question, Jane Warner. Construction site workers, do they need a B1 level English requirement?
Yeah, it's if we're looking at the skilled worker route, there are going to be English language requirements. Certainly, unless they qualify, if they're not from a native English speaking country, it will be required. And I can understand this is going to be a difficulty with some businesses, but there are a number of ways in which you can prove it. So you can either have again, construction workers, they might have a degree that's taught in the medium of English language, will be acceptable if it's gone through an equivalency test. There are English language tests. It will be B1 for skilled worker. If it's intra-company transfer, then we don't have to worry about it. But again, it just depends on the route. But if we're looking at skilled worker, which I think we are, then there will be that requirement, yes.
Okay, and then the first question we had was from Roberto, and I hope I get this right, Roberto. I mean, hiring is one side, but also residence is key. Does all we've shared apply to remote workers that work full-time for a limited company but live in the EU?
It's mostly to do with the residency in the UK. So if someone is coming to the UK, they will need to fulfill an immigration requirement, whether that be sponsorship or by other means. Again, this is probably not out of my remit, but I don't believe there's any restriction on holding or having a limited company in the UK and actually running it from outside the UK. There won't be an immigration requirement for that at all. But if they want to move to the UK but are residing in Europe, then we need to look at an immigration category that fulfills that. It could be, I mean, if we're looking at an EU citizen, for example, we could be looking at a frontier worker permit for that. There are a few options, but I mean, it's a good question, Roberto. I mean, again, something that if I got the wrong end of the stick on that, then please do get in touch and we'll go through it in more detail.
Yeah, yeah, and we do pride ourselves in doing our best to help people. Ethics are important to us. If we can help any of you out, then great, with a bit of simple advice. Because sometimes this area can be complicated, but with a few questions we can get to the bottom of it. Good question here from I hope a pronunciation is right, Philemon. Can a cleaning company here in the UK sponsor an international applicant? If yes, can I book an appointment with you? So.
It depends on the level. Of course, it is possible. There is no restriction on the industry. It's to do with the level of the job. We need to make sure that it qualifies for sponsorship. You need to make sure you've got a genuine vacancy in the UK. And once we've worked out what level that job is, if it qualifies, we need to make sure that you can pay the going rate for that job. So you're looking at a threshold. It depends on your age and qualifications, but generally speaking, you're looking at about £26,200 and £10.75 per hour as the minimum parameters here, and the going rate for the job. But that can be lowered if we're looking at someone under the age of 26. There are other things we need to consider, but the most important thing will be the actual level of the job that's on offer and that it's a genuine vacancy. But to answer the question, yeah, you can.
Yeah. So so next, from an HR worker, what qualification is needed? Is it possible to hire an HR third-year student overseas?
If they meet your requirements for the job, then absolutely. It doesn't matter if they're currently a student. If you've got a genuine vacancy, then you can hire someone from overseas. As we said before, if it isn't if you're not following a regulate, well, I mean, again, it goes down to regulation. Do you need to have that qualification? Are you part of a regulated business? Do you need that qualification to perform that function in the UK? In which case, then yes, you need to be looking to see whether that qualification can be gained overseas or whilst you're in the UK, and that can be whilst you're working as well. So you can learn in the UK whilst working towards a professional qualification. It might not be within HR, but certainly we know that HR does qualify under sponsorship. And again, there's no reason why a student from overseas wouldn't benefit from that. One thing that we need to be thinking about from HR as well, there might be other things to look at before they come over. If you want to sponsor them, if you want to hire them, if it's under sponsorship, we need to also be looking at a criminal record certificate from overseas, because they could be working with vulnerable people. But again, we need to look at the code, the job code for that before they come over, and also whether sponsorship is the option. Yeah, again, shouldn't be any restrictions there.
Yeah, and then got another one from a LinkedIn user. Hi, Jonathan. There are job applications that ask if the applicant needs visa sponsorship. Question is, which comes first, the job offer or the visa?
It will be, well, you need to, again, this is more of a kind of I suppose, an employment law question. You need to make sure they've accepted a job offer. If you've got a job offer that is subject to having an immigration category that allows work, if they've accepted that and you're happy with the procedure to follow, then you would go for the visa afterwards. If it's sponsorship, of course, you have already committed to offering them a job, and they will be on their way to coming into the UK anyway. So it would be the job offer first. You just need to make sure that you're happy with the procedure you need to go through to get them in.
Okay, and then Jaja, thanks for your update. I mean, just to put this into context, basically we're a business immigration company who help lots of families and dependents, but we get overwhelmed by numbers of people that connect with us asking us to find them a job, and can we find them internship? And I don't mean one a day, I mean tens. So that's why we're working on something in the background. So Jaja, we'll obviously glad we could answer your question today. I think it's worth you setting up an appointment with a member of the team so we can just understand that a little bit better, which is your question is, all I need from my company is a COS. I will sponsor myself to come for my internship program. So I think, I think it's, I think it's basically the challenge is finding the company with an internship for in the energy sector. But, rest assured, most of Jonathan, my time is working on a project to help to make these connections work better. But we are ultimately a business immigration company, and that's why it's really difficult for us to handle all the people approach us who think that we have a magic list of the hundreds of thousands of opportunities, and sadly at the moment we don't, but you never know. Watch this space. Okay. Is anything else from your side, Jonathan? I think you've answered nearly all the questions that have come through, and my questions.
No, that's great. Some very, very good questions there, and apologies if any of the answers were ambiguous. We have to be very careful that we have the full picture. So I've just given an overview of what my understanding is, but I'd say please don't hesitate to get in touch. We can go through the situation in more detail to make sure that we look at the most efficient route and give you the correct advice.
And what's the best way would you recommend someone to get in touch, Jonathan? Is it through the website or how would you?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, I mean, do contact us via the website. Feel free to book an appointment. As we said, we don't charge for appointments. We want to go through your situation and help you, and provide that guidance and the next steps to move ahead. So go through that, and one of my colleagues will be in touch very quickly to set that up.
So just to leave you with how to book your free consultation. You've got the email info at, and obviously you've got the website that you can book an appointment through as well. But just many thanks for everybody for listening. We always enjoy the questions, and and it's thank you very much for giving your time and the and the interaction. And just don't forget that for any companies, we've got offers there for you, and also at the end of the day, we'd love to see if we can help any of you out. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and anybody who wants to make that appointment, just those are the two routes to go through, and as I say, initial help, all free. Okay, thanks very much, and I think we're signing off and going to go and enjoy the sunshine now. Okay, thanks everybody.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.